Hi everybody, and welcome to a very special wee episode of the Wellspring mini workshops. I've invited along to join us today Caroline Johnstone, who's the author of Dare to be Happier, How to Live Your Best Life in 25 Journaling Lessons. I thought I've known Caroline mostly through Facebook. Isn't it funny how social media works? For a wee while now, and so many of you have enjoyed particularly Wellspring, and there are a lot of crossovers with Wellspring and with the approach that Caroline uses in Dare to be Happier. So I've invited Caroline along to tell us a little bit about that to help us all on this Mental Health Awareness Week. So Caroline, welcome. Thanks very much for coming along.
Thank you.
For us, it's this afternoon. Tell me a wee bit about the title, please, about Dare to be Happier, How to Live Your Best Life in 25 Journaling Lessons, because that's a mouthful. Was that?
It is a wee bit.
Was that?
And it was.
How did you come to that title?
Well, the publisher came up with that title in the end. My original idea was to call it the magic of journaling, and really talk people and give people sort of lots of just to show how the power of journaling, the magic of journaling, and how it can really be used to transform so many areas of life. But they decided that they would go with this alternative title, so that's why we've ended up with that. But I can talk certainly why we came up with the Dare to be Happier side of it. There is a history to that as well. So back in 2009, and I do talk about this in the book as well, is that the swine flu was there. And everybody was panicking about swine flu, but not in the same way that they're panicking just now. But, you know, we all were going to die from it at one point in time, if you certainly followed what the media said. Yeah. And I thought, what if we could spread happiness in the way that we could spread the fear of living with something like that? So, and originally it was the happiness virus was what I called it. Sure. And my two girls, and I've told them this story since, and they've forgiven me for it, but both of them are going through a bit of a difficult time and mentally were struggling. And so I sent them off to look for kind stories, good stories, positive stories, because I knew from my own work and research and training that, you know, what you focus on is really important. So if you do always find yourself scrolling through negative stories, that's going to impact your mental health. And over time, that significantly helped their mental health, because they were looking for these quotes and stories. And in fact, it influenced my eldest daughter so much that she ended up being the head of positive education for a group of schools in Dubai, because she really started to see the benefits of it. But then I thought I wanted to change it, and I went to Dare to be Happy. And I thought, I do want to encourage people, because a lot of times people are unhappy because of their mindset and because of their habits and their behaviors. So it is about helping people say, actually, you do need to sometimes take some steps to change things. There is courage involved in that, but you can't be happy all the time. And that was never my intention, to say, oh yeah, you know, everything's great in the garden, and, you know, pink rose colored glasses. One of my friends used to call me Pollyanna all the time, and it wasn't a case of that, but it is just that awareness of, we can dare to be happier. Now I can dare to be happy. I mean, I am. And I've coped pretty well through this pandemic and everything that's sort of been going on with that as well, because I've got a lot of tools and techniques I can use, but I still sometimes have to dare myself to be happier, to make a change in a habit or a change in thinking as well.
You've talked about some tools and techniques that you have, and I'm looking forward to learning a wee bit more about some of those. You'd said that you knew quite a lot from your work, from your occupation, your profession, I suppose. That your mindset makes a big difference in how you deal with challenging times. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, about your background.
So my background's primarily HR. Increasingly over the last sort of since 2004, I've probably concentrated more on employment law. But, you know, at working as in HR, you tend to have to be a sort of confidant. You tend to have to coach a lot of people. You train a lot of people in different aspects of management. Sure. And certainly, you know, when I was dealing with individuals, when I was dealing with managers as well, that mindset, I really started to get into the mindset and see that actually, if you think you can't change, you're not going to change. Yeah. If you if you want to be continually negative about something, then you will be continually negative about it. And actually, you know, how hard it was to deal with people who were very negative as well. So
Yeah.
I was going through a very difficult period in my career with having both upward bullying and downward bullying.
Oh dear.
So I had two people in my team, in principal, mainly, who would not do anything that they were asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had senior management who were involved in similar behaviours. It was in a culture that I'd never worked anywhere like that in my life, and don't ever want to work. It was just not why. It was like, for me, walking back 20 years or 30 years into a different, environment where everybody just fought and threw things and froze you out if you didn't like what you did as well. So there was all of that, but I was really stuck with even with all of that knowledge that I had, how could I influence these managers and get them to do what we needed them to do.
Sure.
So I ended up researching a lot of courses. I was going to do the Institute of Leadership Management courses and coaching and leadership, but I ended up doing NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah. So, and I've ultimately done my master sort of practitioner in that as well. And as writers, and you'll get this, the power of language and the power of particular words. And an example I often give on that, and I do this in some of the courses that I run, is I get people to define life. How would if you had to describe life, how would you describe life? So life's hard.
Metaphor.
Yes, absolutely. Metaphor is really, really powerful. And I say, well, do you know what? If you see life as being really tough, you're always going to look for evidence that it's really tough.
Yeah.
So I made a decision a long time ago that I would see life as an adventure. Now that having that viewpoint of life means I can deal with challenges and in a much better way than somebody who says this is going to be tough, this is hard as well. So it's even that choice of words, and quite often I'll get people to reframe how they're defining life, reframe a particular issue as well, and say, look, that metaphor isn't useful for you. You need to choose a different one that actually helps you move forward. And it's helped working with people to sort of do that. And the thing about my book is it's all about that reframing. How can you change your thinking? How can you come up with a metaphor that suits you better?
I noticed in Dare to Be Happier you have the questions at the end. Is it the 25 questions at the end? And you spend...
there's questions at the end of each chapter. In this one, there's questions at the end of each chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in those questions, I suppose those must be used to reframe.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I'll show you how important this is. And for me, this is sort of critical, particularly in Mental Health Awareness Week. Some of my background is working in both administration and HR and the NHS. So I've sort of obviously understand how that works. Sure. And I've worked around a community mental health team from an admin side as well. So, and I used to spend a lot of time talking to the nurses, psychologists and psychiatrists and trying to get to the bottom of why some people's mental health was particularly bad and why others weren't. And quite often the answer would come up was, we don't know. We don't know. Yeah. And I thought, there's all these 100 years, 150 years or whatever of studying that. Why do you not know? So what then through the courses and research I was doing, I always say to people, go onto the NHS website and use the questionnaire for depression. See how depressed you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely everybody will come off that feeling depressed. And the reason for that is the way that they ask the questions.
Yeah.
The questions are asked to make you not feel good. So this is why I have to. These questions have been very carefully framed and researched to make sure that they're questions that are going to help you improve your mental health. And then if you look at that questionnaire, you can see that it's actually sponsored by a drug company.
Oh, I'm going to try not to betray my cynicism.
Tiny wee question mark. Yes.
I'm
very cynical there.
The copy of Dare to Be Happier that I've got is the Kindle edition, and it looks like it's got 52 questions right at the tail end of it. So I don't know if I've looked mostly, that's the 52 questions I've looked through, and they're just fascinating, the type of questions that come through. I don't know if, and it looks like the suggestion in that is that you spend a week on one question and a week on another, so you're getting a good chance to reflect on one thing at a time for a year, which I think is a great idea.
Absolutely. And there's that sort of in-depth, we don't take an in-depth chance to look at our lives and think about our lives. So to me, that's one of the reasons I love that. That's my first book.
Sorry, you're breaking up a wee bit, Caroline. Can you say that again?
I know, I said that's my first book.
Oh, that's
That one, this one here, can you see me? This is my second book.
Ah, right. If you lift it up a little bit more.
Oh,
Ah, that's your
so
second book.
that's my second book, which is the 25 lessons. So that first book is, if you're curious about journaling, that's the one to get.
Got you.
Because this one's more a workbook that you work your way through, but that one definitely talks you through why would I want to journal.
Okay, fantastic. It was the journaling side of things that I was particularly interested in, because there's so many crossovers, I think, with, I've been talking this week about, it's an idea I got from a TED Talk, and I included the link to the TED Talk in one of the posts this week, that there's 5 things a person can do to be happier at work, but also generally. And one of them is exercising, one of them is having a gratitude practice, and one of them is random acts of kindness, and one of them is journaling as well. And certainly the Wellspring writing can be used as a kind of prompt to get you started off with a journal. So I was going to ask you a little bit more about what journaling is and why we should journal. I think a lot of people get confused about the difference between what a diary is and what a journal is. So can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that?
I can. You're breaking up a wee bit, but I can. So a diary, it's funny, I said to my kids when this started, really from day one, I said, you need to keep a diary. You need to keep a diary for your children to see what day by day life was like and how that changed, because you're at a very unique point in history, and a diary is a good way of recording exactly what went on in your day.
Sure.
A journal is a much different tool, really. It is, and why I love it, and there are so many tools to use in journaling, because another book I'm working on is 101 tools to sort of work with journaling, because there's different ways your brain works, different techniques will work. But for me, it's all about you gaining insight into your own life. Mm-hmm. So it is, and I think we touched on this briefly, but it's about you. It's taking you on a journey. It's helping you grow. It's helping you understand what gets in the way of you being happy. Where are you sabotaging your success? Why are you always busy? You know, why can you not say no? Why do you keep saying yes? Those sorts of ideas, and it gives you insight. It also lets you see, for me, as an overthinker, as well, it really helps me get a lot of those thoughts out of my head and onto a bit of paper. And when they're on a bit of paper, it sort of deals with the emotions. It actually helps get the emotions out, but you can examine it there and you can say, look, how much of this is actually true? Or what patterns are keep coming up? So what phrases am I keep coming up with? Where do I keep telling the same story? And that, by somebody telling the same story doesn't help them move forward as well. So it's just for all of those reasons. The journal's not a diary at all, and it's definitely not a bullet journal. That's the other thing. I do use a bullet journal when I'm under a lot of pressure. A bullet journal absolutely helps you keep on track in a way.
What's a bullet journal? Is that a bit like a to-do list?
Yes, it's a fancy to-do list, and for me, it's a different type of file of facts. It's just an organizational tool. And if you're creative, as well, you can make it the most beautiful thing. I know someone who does the most beautiful journals. She's really arty and does that. I draw lines on mine and color in a wee bit, and that's the extent of it. But it helps you organize your life, but it doesn't help you understand. It doesn't help you understand what you need to do to live your best life, which is why I'm passionate about it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the tips that you give about journaling, you've said that it's about being honest. And I suppose, like the 6-minute Wellspring writing, it's just for you, a journal, isn't it? So you can be completely honest. But that's a very scary thing for people as well, to sometimes confront those truths on the page for the first time that they may have been afraid to confront.
Absolutely. But you can deal with what's real, and the thing is, a lot of times those are still truths whether or not you deal with them. They're still there, and you do need to deal with them as well, because if you don't deal with them, what you end up doing is numbing them, or you end up getting, so many people I know are depressed because they're really stuck, because they're just not dealing with the issues and the relationships in their life and their money issues, and they just, they take medication to help them feel better, but actually you just need to deal with the issues in your life, and you just need to do it a wee step at a time. The honesty thing for me, though, is critical. You're you're right, it's difficult, but sometimes there has to be a safe place for you to be honest as well, because depending on who you're in the house with, can you trust them not to read your journal? And if you can't, what I always say is, although I do love my journals, I actually haven't got any here that are just handy, show you how not neat they are, because this is not about being neat, and it's not about anybody judging your writing, but that I sometimes just use scrap paper and then burn the scrap paper. But there's also a thing, and I can't remember the name, a rocket book, which is a new thing. It costs about £30 and I don't make any money at all from it. But I do now recommend this because it's an electronic tool where you can write on this sort of like 5 or 6 pages with this particular pen, and you can say where you, if you want to save it, it saves it into your email safely. And then you just wipe the page and you start again. You just literally wipe the page and you start again. Oh, you couldn't do that. Oh, it's just not funny. That's a
hack that. Honestly, at the thought of deleting any sort of writing that I've done, but I can sympathise with what you're saying, because I've got notebooks up there as well that I keep hidden behind my curtains here. They're too pretty. I don't want to spoil these blank pages by writing in them. So the ones that I
spoil them, make your life pretty by using them. That's what I always say. Use them.
The ones that I use are these great big A4 notepads that I get from the works. And they're about £3. It's a bargain. £3 for a great big notepad.
Yeah.
So isn't it funny how we all have our different ways of working?
Oh, absolutely.
I thought I'd thrown out this.
Well, do you know, it's really funny because I don't know if you've ever read books like the Solitude, the Journal of a Solitude. It's you'd probably enjoy that. By I can't remember but it's all just how living on our own and actually our journal through that experience, which is so apt for right now.
It was recommended to me recently somewhere on one of these Amazon lists or something. And
well, you go. That's two times. You have to go and get it now. That's my rule. If somebody, if I get it,
called again? Solitude.
The Journal of a Solitude. But just for now, in the sort of when we're in lockdown, I think it's particularly apt. But I think when it comes to hold on to stuff, I had a really interesting experience about maybe 4 years ago where I burned all my journals and I took them out. I had a big fire pit. I had a glass of wine. I tore them up, and it was absolutely cathartic. Because what I wanted to know was, why am I holding on to that pain? For journaling, it can involve you exploring pain. Why am I holding on to it?
Okay, right. You might have convinced me.
Got rid of it.
I'll have to go through them first to make sure that there's no little poetry seeds or something in there. But the thought of it.
Absolutely. I did that. I did that. I call that harvesting your journal. So I always go through one journal before I get rid of it, because there will be something there I can use in a book or an article or a poem even. But once I've done that, why am I holding on to it?
Yeah,
get rid of it.
That's a really, really good point, actually. So that was honesty, and then you talk about reflection as well, which I think is quite self-explanatory. But I suppose also this idea of journeying, you use a journal to journey, was really interesting. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I think to me that's the key purpose of it. If you properly journal and you really allowing yourself, and there's a couple of tools that you can use. The main one I use is what's called stream of consciousness thinking. So I just sit in my journal and start writing. Sometimes I sit and do, if I've got a particular problem, I'll sit and I'll have the problem in my head and I'll start, but heaven knows that often goes in its own way. But so you never end up, after you've journaled, in the same place as you were before it, because you will have changed in some way. You'll have got some insight yourself without anybody else talking to you, which is why I love it. It's not about me telling you, if you do this and this will definitely help you. I can do that. I can give you lots of tools and techniques. But when you go away and figure out the root cause of something, then you're more likely to actually figure out your own solutions as well. And that's the journey.
It sounds quite similar to Julia Cameron's Morning Pages, which is where I had sort of started out with Wellspring. And I wonder if, now that we're talking about it, I didn't find the Morning Pages particularly useful for me, because I found it was starting to become procrastination for me. I was looking at the same things again and again, and it ended up being to-do lists, and it wasn't particularly creative for me. But I wonder if at that point in my life I was actually just stuck. and the same things were coming up again and again because I wasn't
Yeah.
taking action on them. It's interesting. So yeah, that I like your idea.
I hadn't come across her book until sort of relatively recently, but
Yeah.
and I do like that idea, and I do share that idea, because there's something about getting ready yesterday, you know, and thinking about your day ahead. And sometimes I'll use my journal to think about my day ahead, and actually see when I do that, and I say, you know, I sometimes say, like, almost, this is how my day's going to be.
Yeah.
And then actually often that's exactly what it is. This is how I'm going to treat people. This is the experiences I'm going to have. I'm going to have a great day at work. I'm going to be able to get through my workload. I'm going to be, and there's something about that change in your mindset that's helpful as well. But the morning pages, I know, for creative people often really does help them. But you're right, if you sort of are identifying that, I wrote about this last week, I wrote about this the week before, then you are stuck. So that's when a question or two might help you more than just writing.
So I think,
you know, where do I feel
doing
stuck?
something like the morning pages and the stream of consciousness can be useful, but it's also good to have something that helps give you that bit of momentum as well, like your 25 questions, or in your first book, the 52 questions. And in Wellspring, it's the which is basically stream of consciousness, free flow writing as well, but it's about having the prompt and the time as well, which works for me, certainly. Okay, so the last couple of questions I wanted to ask were, I suppose we've kind of answered the how to journal, but really, why journal? What effects have you seen from people that have journaled, that have been using journaling to help them with their mental health?
I think, if I always say that if you are dealing with trauma, you shouldn't journal. There's scientific evidence that doesn't work unless you're working in conjunction with a mental health professional to work through that, so that you can sort of identify your issues. And if you are a circular thinker more than an overthinker, so you're consistently going round and round and round the same problem, it's probably not an ideal tool for you to use.
Okay.
But outside of that, it works. It's all the scientific evidence. You know, it's not even you know, I've had this chat with somebody and I've had this chat with somebody else. I know it works, and I know it absolutely works for me. There's so much scientific evidence behind why it actually works and how it improves you. And I mean, it's just not your mental health that improves significantly. It helps your mental health though. And sometimes that can be just down to looking at the language you're using, changing that story as well. But it can also affect your physical health. You know, your heart rate's improved, people spend less days in hospital, your liver rate improves, even it's shown that people who've, say, gone through significant things, but not necessarily traumas and post-traumatic stress disorder or anything, but you know, the people who lost all of their homes in the flooding in America, that they were much more able to get back to normal and cope with life because they journaled. People who are made redundant are much more likely to get a job more quickly because they've journaled as well, because it gives you a space to reflect on your life that we don't have our lives. And okay, we've had 8 weeks now of reflecting on our lives, or just watching Netflix or whatever we're doing, but there has been that time to be able to do that, whereas normally our lives are way too busy. And I think a lot of folk have come out of this going, I don't want my life to return to what it was. I want my life to be slower. So that period of reflection and how you reflect, that's where it really works, and that's where it improves your mental health in terms of depression, anxiety, worry as well. For me, one of the biggest changes though, and if you do use a journal for nothing else, every day, start and end of the day if you can, or 5 things a day, it's up to yourself, is that gratitude practice, because it changed my life in 2006, and something I still, I wake up slowly thinking, what am I grateful for? I've had a good night's sleep, or I haven't had a great night's sleep, but it'll soon be bedtime again, as well. To that what was I, it really helps me be mindful. It helps me, what was I grateful for? What happened today that I can be grateful for as well? And that focus, that ability to, Dr. James Emmons, who gave me permission to quote a few times from him actually in this book, who's the sort of king really of gratitude. He, a lot, if you do his experiment, which is the sort of 3 things a day, a few times a week, That's all it takes to start changing your life. And I keep saying this to people, and they look at me and I go, try it. Just, you got to try these things. I'm not saying it, the scientists are saying it.
Yeah.
Surely it's worth a try, for a few weeks and persevere. Now, the first time I tried it, I was so depressed really at the time. It took me an hour to think of one thing.
Oh.
And I sat in tears for that hour trying to think of one thing. But now, if you ask me to, I honestly could sit and write 1,000 things that I'm grateful for, because has that made a difference to my life? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So if you do nothing else as a journal, that's just a practical thing, but I would encourage you.
I think the first time I'd heard about gratitude journaling, or listing gratitude, when you wake up in the morning, was, of all things, it was on Graham Norton, I think, and it was an interview with Bradley Cooper. Now, I enjoy an interview with Bradley Cooper for lots of reasons. It's not usually for but it was. I thought, oh, that's, and he said he lists. I think he was, somebody had commented, but he's always so happy-go-lucky, and also he said, well, I think of 10 things before I get out of bed in the morning. I think of 10 things to be grateful for, and the funny looks that he got from people. But I think gratitude journaling is something that's so much more common now, and people are so much more aware of and have found useful.
Hopefully.
So, yeah, I tried that with a little journal. I did the 5 things each day, and one of them was a gratitude, and one of them was journaling, and one of them was meditation and exercise and random acts of kindness. So we talked earlier on before we started our interview about how journaling can be quite mindful, and actually in some ways it could be more useful for some people than mindfulness. And some types of mindfulness is about counting your breaths. And for people who have a problem with focus, ding, 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 sometimes that doesn't always help. Whereas having a notepad and your pencil or pen in hand gives you more focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about meditation and mindfulness versus journaling and the crossover?
For me, it's a mindful tool. And actually, I don't know if you know Martin Stepek, but Martin and I keep talking about running a course together, because it is that symbiosis really between the two, that mindfulness absolutely works for some people, and we all need to be more mindful. And I would certainly practice that, and just even if you start small, it's always important to start small. But then the journaling for me is a mindful tool. So it just helps me be, come into the present, pull my head back from the anxieties and the worries as well. Sometimes to just go, right now in this moment, what is important, and what do I need to deal with right now, rather than worrying about lots of things that would actually happen as well. And it's funny, I often say there are 6 happiness habits rather than the 5. I haven't watched that TED talk, but the gratitude one for me is definitely one. The being present is definitely one, and exercise is one. But it's really important for me as well that and this mental health awareness week, that you are kind to others, which is the random acts of kindness. But you absolutely need to be kind to yourself, and that's critical as well. And so journaling helps me deal with my inner critic and be kinder to myself.
But you think
that's worth that.
It's one of these facts that's sometimes that writers, I think, are particularly I think we're trained to be self-critical anyway. We have to be critical of our own writing if we're going to be professional about it. But it seems to be something psychological. If you're drawn to writing, you automatically tend to be more self-critical, I think. So yeah, that's a great tip, to be kind to yourself too.
Just be kind to yourself. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Caroline. Like I said, I've had a look through your first book, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to downloading your copy of your second book as well. I'm looking forward to getting the paperbacks when I meet you in person someday, and get to sign and everything. So I'm really looking forward to that when things ease up a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Meet safely, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So thank you to everybody who's watching the video. And I will pop links to Caroline's books in the comments as well. And if you've got any questions, I will pass them on. If you want to comment on the video, wherever I work out where to post it, I'll pass on the questions to Caroline. Or if it's on Facebook, maybe I can link Caroline in with it, so you can answer the questions yourself, Caroline, as well.
That's great. Thanks,
I know
Laura.
you're a very, very busy woman, so I'll see if I can summarise them for you or something like that. But we'll work it out.
That's great. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks so
Lovely.
much for spending time with us today, Caroline.
Bye.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.